Aluminum smoke.
Aluminum spork. I did it again. Hey everybody, welcome to Sporking News Podcast. My name is Scott. This is a aluminum spork, and for some reason someone's listening to us and we have a huge echo. That was you, Tina. Okay, let's try that again. We are the Boomers. Welcome to the party. We do it. Don't worry about us. We're here for you. All of you. We're here. We're going to be talking ancient apocalypse. We're going to be talking some buried treasure, any other strange things in the news. We're open to it. But tonight we will definitely touch on episode 2 of Ancient Apocalypse with Graham Handcock, which I thought was better than the first episode. I don't know about you guys, but let me introduce my panel. First, let's introduce Tina Bojan. How are you, Tina?
Hello, I'm the head boomer. I think I'm the oldest one out of all of you, so I deserve the title, and I claim it and hold it dear. Thanks for the invite tonight. Glad to see everybody. I hope you all had a fabulous Thanksgiving holiday, or watched Americans look crazy over Thanksgiving holiday if you're, poor MrGrantGregory. But happy to be here.
Yeah, he celebrates it because, we make him.
Yes, I was completely turkeyless this weekend. It was terrible.
Screw the Vegemite. Eat a turkey. Thank you, Tina. And next up, we have the lovely Jayne Theory. How are you, Jayne?
Hello, doing great. Great, happy to be here.
I'm glad you are here too.
Hey, chat.
Yes, chat is here. We got some active people going. We got Mason from Freefolk of the Fandom here with a better sounding mic than usual. What's up, Mason?
What's going on, everybody? Hello to all you guys in the chat. I'm happy to be here. Can't wait to get talking about second episode.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear, Mason.
Yeah.
Guys, make sure you subscribe to everybody on the panel. Mason is not even at 100 yet, I don't think. So if you don't get him to 100, I look bad. So please, can we get him to 100? The link will be in the live chat. And I believe it's also, if I'm not mistaken, in the description on YouTube. We are live on YouTube, Rumble, and Twitch right now. So make sure support any of them, Rumble.
You're so much better than me when it comes to this. I did
What?
it like one time and it was just too much.
What do you mean? Oh, just
Streaming
having
on
it.
multiple platforms at the same time.
You just kind of forget. That's what I do. I usually just say it once and then I gotta keep checking Rumble because people could tip on Rumble. So I keep forgetting to look at that.
That's the thing. I keep forgetting to look at the other one. It's like
Yeah. It's rough. We also, MrGrantGregory set me up with Stream Elements, so you could tip us over there, and that is pinned at the top of YouTube's chat. But MrGrantGregory, how are you?
Yeah, doing good. I
Little loud on the mic, buddy. Little loud.
I don't know, some stupid Windows setting. I'm like as far back as I can get on
That's
my
fine.
chair.
That's fine.
So, but yeah, I think the second episode was much better than the first one. A lot more coherent, and certain things I didn't really agree with, but yeah, I enjoyed it overall.
Yeah, well, we'll get to it. There was some you know what, you're not going to completely agree with them on everything, but I think from where I used to be, where aliens did everything, to where I believe now we just had multiple catastrophes that knock civilization back to the Stone Age. I could believe that now more than anything, and I have reasons why we'll bring up later. But we, like Jayne said before, let's say hi to the chat. We have the mod of mods, Soul Assassin, is in the house. I don't know, Soul, do I have you added to this DM too, the Winds of Winter one? Let me know so I can add you.
love the avatar.
I just noticed it. That's great. You know what? I got to add my Christmas one too here. Thank you, Jayne. Look at you with your festive hat. We also have Parrot Head. Yes, Spork Harder Sporking. That's my shill attacker. He attacks me on the shills and I love him for it. Zaxx will be here later. So thank you, Zach, for being here. Alex Moore, welcome, buddy. I'm glad you're napping. We'll try to keep you sleeping. That's fine. Matt W in the house. Haven't seen it maybe in a while. I don't remember the last time I saw you. Was it last week, Matt? I'm just glad you're here. So that's awesome. Keck44 is always in the house, at least saying hello and dropping a chat and a like. Andrew 46and2 is here. Boosh is up in the house. E. Clay Thomason is here. We also have, I said Alex Moore. I don't know if I said Alex, but we have Alex is here and Mark Lazor is here, which is always makes me feel good when Mark and like Eric show up, like the original like Nerdrotic mods that like I used to talk to when I first got into, when like Gary was at like 5,000 and we would talk in the chats. They are like the OG guys, and I love when they show up in my chat. So that's awesome. Time Prophet is here as well, and probably more. So thank you guys for being here. Liger Fan, as always, thank you for being here. So let's discuss. What do you guys... So episode 2, which is called... I forget the name of it off the top of my head. I think I put it in the description, though. It is The Survivor in a Time of Chaos, I believe. And I don't even know if that's the name I gave it on YouTube, but whatever. What'd you guys think of the episode? What'd you give it out of 10? Better than the first one? Not as good? What'd you think? Tina, we'll start with you.
I agree. I did think it was a better episode, second one for sure, though I was still blown by all the artifacts or lack thereof at that original site, at that Panung, however you pronounce it.
Pangung, yeah, in when is Indonesia? No, wait a minute, that's yeah.
Yeah, I think it was in Indonesia.
Yeah. Man,
Yeah.
I want to tell everybody up front, I will say every name wrong, but I still love this stuff. It doesn't mean I don't like it. It's just I can't pronounce these things. All right, go on. I'm sorry, Tina.
So I mean, I thought that just looked really cool. It kind of looked like, something used to be there that almost exploded, just the way it all was all over the place. But I did like the fact that they visited more places in the second episode, that there seemed to be more to interpret from the sites because of the fact that there was more there, at least in not written communication, but at least, visuals.
Right.
So that's why I enjoyed it more, I think.
So you enjoyed it more than the first one?
Yes.
Okay, good to know. Time Prophet, no, right now we are not talking about Game of Dodgy. We are talking Ancient Apocalypse. We will get back into that once I'm done doing the 8 to 10 episodes this is. I think it's 8 or 10 episodes. And then we'll be doing a back and forth type thing just to confuse my fans even more. Jayne, what did you think of this episode?
I really liked it. I felt like in this episode, he sort of laid out the similarities between all these various cultures, which he does consistently, but I feel like it was just better done this time. And also it made you think about, okay, well, what is the cause? Why are there so many similarities with all these various peoples the world over? And he presented his argument, which I disagree with, and we can talk about that later.
Oh, we definitely will.
He presented his explanation for how these things could have happened and why there's so many similarities. But it, to me, like you said before, the initial theory seemed to be, well, aliens did it, right?
Right.
And for a while, people went to, especially when they saw these things in outside Europe, they thought, well, maybe it was Europeans who did it, or at least people from the Middle East. And then you look at ancient European and Middle Eastern history, and it's like, well, you have the same thing happening. So where did these people come from? Which he gets to in the next episode.
Right.
But I love how organized it is and how he's just building up slowly, layer upon layer, to make his case. It's just very well done.
And I still haven't watched the last 2 episodes because I kind of enjoy that climb. And I don't want to, when we get there, not feel that. Because he really is. He is slowly giving it to you. Like, there are people that I love reading, like, articles. One article said this is the most important show to show that there should be funding for people like this. And then there's another one that says it's the most dangerous show on TV right now. Like,
this sort of thing is why when I was a kid, like, my part of what I wanted to do was be an archaeologist someday.
Same here.
Because I feel like you have the mainstream historians who have their one narrative, but you have all these unanswered questions.
Right.
And things that just don't make sense, and no one seems to want to explore it.
Right. well, like, okay, so let's introduce Mason. How are you, buddy? Because I want to get back to that, Jayne. Mason, what do you feel about this episode and everything that's we talked about since?
So I really like this episode. I think that as the series goes on, he shows more and more evidence, and like, oh, this site, the mainstream archaeology is just completely ignoring and saying, oh, it was just some throwaway place. I think like as the series is going on, it's becoming more and more obvious that they're deliberately ignoring it rather than just like, yeah, I don't know.
No, you're right, man. Like, you know, you got to give Graham Hancock something. He doesn't profess that he's an archaeologist or in academia. He's a journalist who wrote a book back in the 90s that I read about 2 years after it was out. And he has so much crap slung at him since then until the finding of Gobekli Tepe. Once they found that, it changed. I mean, it almost like he got a victory because they just belittled him, destroyed him, kicked him out of countries. Like, it was ridiculous how they treated this man. It was almost like, kind of like, well, if he's not important or he doesn't have, you know, if he's not going down a line that might be true, why are you so like vividly or violently, I don't know what the word is, but against him? I don't understand that.
That never made any sense to me. Because it's like, what are you afraid of? If we do have this lost civilization history, that's a wonderful thing. Like, that's not a bad thing. It actually should give us hope that if we ever collapse, which everybody thinks we're going to do soon, that we can survive it. I mean, it's the story of mankind. Like, why is that a bad thing?
Right. And Tommy, what's up, my brother? Tommy talks about the same thing. Like, there was I always screw up his name, but he passed away. West Anthony, I forget his name, but he did a I want to say it was about the pyramids back in like the late 90s. And if I could remember the name of the show, you guys got to check it out because it's like decoding maybe the pyramids or decoding Egypt. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was awesome. So this idea isn't Graham Hancock's. I mean, we know that. I just think the last 20 to 30 years, John Anthony West, thank you, Matt. I think Graham Hancock has been the poster child of this, and mostly when John Anthony West, or is it Anthony John West? John Anthony West we'll go with, when he passed away, it definitely became Graham Hancock as the focal point. But you know what, Mr. Grant Gregory, what do you think?
Yeah, like can't disagree with anything that anyone said. The structure of this is 10 times better, and I like the slow burn. Where the first one, I felt like it was just a little bit more so much about him and just theories here and there, and it was more of a scattershot. The way in which he lines everything up, and yeah, like I've always been a proponent of saying, well, it has to be aliens, but now through this series, which is, I did also read, it is the most dangerous documentary since the most other dangerous documentary that just came out. And you're muted, by the way.
I was just gonna say that was The Guardian like 6 days ago.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Like, but yeah, I'm trying to remember because I keep binge watching it and I get all the episodes mixed up.
Yeah.
What was the second one specifically on?
So it was on Mexico. It was on the largest pyramid in the world, and I'm gonna screw up the name of it. Oh, shit. That's why I actually, wait a minute, let me share this because I actually put this up with, and we might have to go this route, with captions so I can actually like get the names correct.
It was the one where he was talking about the bearded man.
Yep.
Coming from the sea and different places.
And it's right outside of Mexico City. Cholula.
Yeah, Cholula.
Yep, that's the area. And it's, so this is what gets me. Okay, so this pyramid, and I want to make sure I get the right name of the pyramid, so please bear with me. Is it Cholula? The pyramid is Cholula too? The Great Pyramid Cholula, or Great Cholula Pyramid? In the chat, if I got it wrong, I apologize. Let me know if I'm wrong. But what I find interesting about this is that the Europeans came and saw this hill and put a church on top. Okay? And they didn't know that there was a pyramid underneath it. They just thought it was like
with
a little
pyramid underneath that, with a pyramid
Py-
underneath that, with a pyramid underneath that.
right, Cholula. Yes, Cholula. Which yes, there's at least 3 or 4 pyramids underneath that. But what I'm trying to get at is they say that the last pyramid was built in 12 AD, which blows my mind because how could it be 12 AD when they only a couple hundred years later the Spanish come and it's covered with sediment. Like there is so much stratus, like there is definitely more than a few centuries worth of dirt. Like it looks like a mountain. How long would that take naturally to like happen? Because they say nothing about them burying it. You know what I mean? Like Göbekli Tepe was purposely buried. This looked like a mountain, and you're trying to tell me it's only a couple hundred years, maybe 5 or 6. Go ahead.
I mean, it could have been. What did he mention a particular theory? Because actually, this idea that they didn't know what it was, I don't necessarily buy into that.
Me
I
either.
could absolutely see them burying it and building a church on top of it.
Or knowing that there is a pyramid under this dirt, because it was, I mean, at least
That's what happened. Like a lot of our
Yes.
faith built temples and things on top of existing temples. Like I don't
Right.
think it's a coincidence, you know.
Right, and there's three pyramids underneath this church. Like, who's to say? And I love how it's like you have to find something organic to be able to date it. But like, if the first pyramid was built over 12,000 years ago, then there's a deluge or catastrophic weather because of the impacts. Who's to say like the majority of that dating material gets washed away and you don't have stuff to date until the next group of people come on, which the Aztecs or whoever it would be.
Mm-hmm.
I find that the most interesting to me.
How exactly do they do the carbon dating? Because it's, as I said, that's one of the parts that I don't understand.
So carbon dating has to be something. It can't be stone. You can't use stone. You could use any type of organic material. And what do they do, ladies? You're smarter than me. Carbon dating, they break down the gases. Like that's what I want to say, but I might be wrong.
Man, I wish my son was home. He's that biochem major I'm spending a whole lot of money for.
Well, we're losing the money on him now. Damn it. Mason, do you know how it works?
It is a method for determining the age of an object containing organic material by using the properties of radiocarbon, a radioactive isotope carbon.
That's what I said. That's what
Exactly.
I meant to say. Yeah. It's a yes.
I have an image of it pulled up if you want to see.
Yeah, please. And the crazy thing is fire can change this and other things. Hold on, we'll just go full screen. So bone cleaned, small sample taken for the treatment, weak acid added, addition of, what does that say? Scintillator?
Scintillator.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought. So it's just what they're doing is they make this chemical reaction to get the isotope, I'm guessing, and see how much it has broken down. So the decay of that isotope occurring per minute is what they register, and that tells them thank you, Lisa. That tells them how old it is, but can't now, Lisa and others in the chat, can't fires cause it to screw up the dating of things? Can't
or any external factor. That's what I was wondering. And is it a direct like linear line, or is it more like a Bezier curve when it comes to how it works? Yeah, because I said something last week, and then someone corrected me saying that's not how it works. It's like a direct linear sort of thing, but I couldn't find anything on there. So say if something has twice the decay of one thing, it means it's twice as old. Is that how it works? Okay.
But I think they can tell if a sample has been compromised.
Right. I mean, they brought it up when they were doing like the Shroud of Turin, because it was involved in a fire. In the 70s, they thought they had the correct dating, but with the technology we have today, they're like, well, that fire, the smoke could have caused, the isotope to break down even more quickly. So it looks, or whatever makes it look younger.
Here's the thing too. What we're looking for are things so much older, like buried so far beneath the dirt that if there's anything there, if there's any material whatsoever, they can use that to help
Right.
date all the other things around it. So
Right.
we're not
That
really, I guess what I'm saying is it's different from like the shroud or some of the other things that are more modern,
Yes.
relatively. It's like there are certain places, and he talks about this, where there shouldn't be human remains, right?
Right. Right.
So
Right.
if
Right.
you find anything, it's like, okay, well, this is a discovery.
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And I know that carbon dating has a limit. It can only go back like 40, 60,000 years. So like you can't carbon date a dinosaur bone.
Okay. Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Mhm.
So how the hell do they judge dinosaurs? Huh.
By the layer they find them in the ground, or
So the
by
stratus
where
layer.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, and that's another thing. I mean, we see these layers, and the impact layer is there. So anything below that layer, for the most part, in that layer, below that layer, just above it, you know, wouldn't you think is that old? You know, they have the micro diamonds and all those different deposits from like an impact, like an apocalyptic impact, which, you know, I would think you'd be able to find more in that stratus, and if it's in the ocean, you would know by depth. So how deep is this city in the, like off of India, they found a city. How deep it is in the water should tell you how long ago it got submerged. We should be able to tell that, correct? Carbon dating.
Together with a number of different factors, yeah.
Right. Carbon dating relies on the half-life of carbon-14. So if a chemical reaction takes place, it destroys the reliability. Okay. Yeah, what he said. All right, so
even something that had like an acid that was around it, like an acidic area or something that had a higher alkaline area, could
Right.
potentially change that. So,
or attack, attack from another, civilization that burns down your place, it's going to affect it.
what is it with you and fire today? God,
It's all about
why are
fire.
these- It's all about fire.
So
Burn it all.
the Great Pyramid of Cholula, I didn't know much about it until recent years, which kind of blows my mind because it is the largest pyramid in, not maybe in height, but in size. It's like 400 meters by 400 meters is its base. And that is 13 football fields all fit into that square. Like, to me, that's insane how large this is.
Yeah.
And we're just really now finding out more about it as they go through the tunnels, which to me was one of the neatest things of this episode. But Jayne, I think you're right. They build these churches and stuff, like build it on the old, kind of like what the Catholic Church has always done, is like, oh, your holiday is December 21st, pagans. We're going to make, Jesus's birthday December 25th, even though it doesn't line up biblically at all.
Well, as a good little Catholic, I can tell you that there's two reasons why the pagan holidays are on the same time as at least the Roman Catholic holidays.
Mhm.
Right? I've had 22 years of Catholic education. We're talking like kindergarten through
Okay.
my second master's degree.
All right, I only did high school. I only did high school and a little bit of college, so you got me.
But the reasons are either one, when the Christians were first getting together, their religion was illegal in Roman times. So they celebrated at the same time as the pagan holidays to hide their celebration. Oh, you're getting together the same Friday that we do after this particular, cycle of the moon, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. And then later on, as the Roman Catholics went around converting people voluntarily, is when all that other stuff that you mentioned, where they built the churches on top of pagan holy sites. And
Right. I mean, and that it makes sense to try to take over. You're going to destroy what came before. And when you're talking about a civilization that, this pyramid was to one of their most precious gods, who is the god of rain and flooding. I forget his name, but you would want to put your stamp and show that our God is more powerful than yours.
Mm-hmm.
But still, what gets me is the amount of dirt that covered this thing doesn't happen naturally in only a couple hundred years, unless there is massive, I don't know, what, Jayne?
I do think it's kind of weird though, that because that wasn't always the strategy. Like we've seen the other strategy, which is simply to take over the place
Mm-hmm.
and convert it to something else, like the Muslim approach, basically.
Right.
Oh, we found this temple of yours. We're gonna now make it a mosque, that sort of thing. Um, so it was kind of strange how our faith sort of merged with the locals and or wiped them out. It
Right.
was a bit weird.
It is a bit weird. You're right about that. Mason, you have anything to add?
Well, like Christianity is a very different religion. Like it conquered Rome not through conquest, but through like they were persecuted, and then suddenly they started seeing more and more people convert until
Mm-hmm.
it took over the uh, entire region of Rome. And I feel like
Yeah.
that kind of happened like culturally with these places that they tried to uh, uh, include into the, the Christianity religion. Um, there's certain stories like sometimes there were locals that didn't want to give up the holidays that they already had planned in their
Right.
culture, so they would just celebrate the Christianity equivalent of it on
Mm-hmm.
the same day. And
Right.
there's also like you were saying, like they just took over the day.
Right.
to
To kind of push them out, But I like what Tina said too. It's like, oh, we're just celebrating, the Centurion Day of Bark. I don't know. Walton would know the names of these things. And,
Dude, I'm a big fan of Centurion Day of Bark. It's my 17th favorite.
such a good one. It's my 16th, really up there. But look at this is them reconstructing what this temple, this pyramid would have looked like. It is massive.
Yeah.
I mean, the footprint, just to think about what you needed to lay down so that this wouldn't sink. Like the technology needed. You're trying to tell me that the technology needed for this was from lesser humans than, less technological humans than us, when it probably would take us, 5 to at least a decade to build something like this.
But
You
I think that's the problem, is that
Yeah.
there's this assumption that everyone before us was less technologically advanced.
Absolutely.
And it's like, why do we assume, he asked the same question, like, why do
Yes.
we assume we're the peak of civilization?
Yep.
Like, there's no reason to believe that,
Yeah.
especially when you look at these monoliths all over the world
Yep.
and remnants of things that could have been even larger. We don't ever ask the question, like, even prior to people like him bringing this up and sort of collecting all this information from all these different cultures and compiling this information, our first go-to was aliens,
Right.
as
'Cause
opposed to our own ancestors who just had, for whatever reason, advanced.
Yeah, and I think it was the Middle Ages that you could blame for losing all the old technology, because especially if you're talking about Europe, because the Catholic Church was in charge of those countries at the time, and anything they thought that was a threat to their beliefs was then considered demonic, when you're really talking science versus faith.
Yep.
And so I really believe that we had a bunch of this knowledge up until the Middle Ages, when the church kind of sought out to destroy it.
Well,
But even in other parts of the world, people forgot.
yeah.
Like they
I mean,
never knew who
look at
built
China. Look at how advanced China has been as a culture. And even there, well, granted now it's different because they hide everything on us, but they won't let us, like, they don't tell us anything about their pyramids, about their ancient, their ancient, like, who built it, how they built it. Like, when you have a story, and this is what bothers me with archaeologists.
Chairman Mao built all that. Everyone knows that.
Oh yeah, Chairman Mao. All hail the Mao. What gets
That's
me
why they
is,
call it a mountain.
Ooh.
that was some deep shit, man. But what gets me is, like, archaeologists, they don't take into, like, ancient stories, ancient legends, ancient myth. Like, they're just stories. To me, they're not. When you have, all right, so the builder of they consider in academia, the builder of the Great Pyramid was Pharaoh, was it Tutankhamun?
Steve.
Yeah, Pharaoh Steve. We'll say that. No, I think it was Tutankhamun. Brightest Day would know. He's smart. What's up, brightest day? He tells the story of how the Sphinx was buried up to its neck in sand, and that the Sphinx came to him in the dream that night and said, if you bury me out, dig me out, clear me out, you will rule Egypt for your dynasty will last for a very long time. To me, that tells a story that wouldn't he take credit for building the Sphinx, not just refinding it, but building it? Like, they want to say that it was one of his contemporaries or him that built the Sphinx, when he's admitting it's been there for so long that I had to bury the thing, dig it out. And that's how we started our civilization again in Egypt. I find that to be one of the coolest stories yet, but they don't take it as it's important. I don't know.
I think that goes to another point, which is that that's one of those civilizations that the people there have forgotten any history about.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know who built the pyramids until people actually went in them,
Right.
and
Right.
saw the stories on the walls.
But see, you got something like the Great Pyramids that don't have many stories. Like, they're not adorned like a usual tomb. They aren't. It isn't set up as a tomb for a pharaoh. So, but yet we tell the story that it is. That's what always gets me. There's also a story of one of the first archaeologists that was going through the tomb, literally etched in one of the pharaoh's names so he could make a discovery. Like, they weren't the most, let's say, reputable archaeologists, in the 1800s. They wanted to discover things. They wanted to find gold. They wanted to be big names. So if they had to cheat a little bit,
that's the thing. Like, they don't sell or make any goods. Their goods essentially is discovery. So if you've got to fudge a few lines, do a couple of things along the way, what difference does it make? That's probably why they're so protective of anything that changes the narrative, because that means that everything that they've been doing for years has been for naught.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's also similar to like Dr. Hawass, who doesn't believe that pyramids exist in Europe because it would interfere with the Egyptian superiority.
Right. Right.
I mean, they don't even. He doesn't even acknowledge the other pyramids in Africa, which is just bizarre. Because if anything, you could take credit for them.
Right. That's.
It's literally on the same continent, and he's like, no, they're not real.
No,
they look like pyramids, but they're not quite.
But he's one of those people that attacked Handcock, called him a kook, like controlled the narrative in Egypt up until 2011 or 2010, the spring, the summer, they kind of took over, but then still got to come back. But he controlled the narrative for like 30, 40 years. I mean, there's pictures of him going through a hole in the head of the Sphinx, and he's like, there's no tunnel there. There's there's nothing under the paw. What are you talking about? And you had to eat crow and believe what he said, or you weren't allowed to, go to Egypt and look at these amazing, feats of humanity.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They did the sonar thing on the Sphinx and saw that there was a chamber underneath there.
Mm-hmm.
And Graham Hancock talking about that was what got him barred from entering Egypt.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Lisa, I was going to say this too, before the dark, dark ages, the Romans burning the Library of Alexandria. They did that on purpose. 'Cause like you said, you destroy the past.
Yep.
To create your future the way you want it written. Now, I think things were taken out of there and hidden around the world. I think a lot of that ended up in the Vatican too, but years later. But because you look at the Perry Reese map, he's talking about maps that had to go back past, the Library of Alexandria, showing coastline of South America, Antarctica, the rivers, the mountains of Antarctica when it didn't have ice. Like, there's just so many like little things where how does academia, how do these archaeologists, like, how do you spin it where this map shows Antarctica in a way we couldn't tell until we could do sonar?
They push this idea that it's a fake, or at least they suspect that it's a fake.
That's crazy.
Even though they don't have any evidence of that. They'll just say, well, we're not sure yet.
Yeah.
But along those same lines too, Ancient Nubian script hasn't, I mean, it's been deciphered but not fully interpreted. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, why not? Why don't you try to learn how, how to read that language? That's information we could use.
Right.
But it's like they are genuinely hiding something.
Right. Well, I mean, it's also their prestige, their money. I mean, if you're known for dating, something in Egypt to a certain time, and you've been lecturing on that and getting paid by a university, for, tenure and this and that, and then some, I don't know, some newspaper guy comes along and writes a book saying maybe we should look even farther back. They literally stonewalled him for that. It's all about money in my mind.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, about money, but what about this is what I don't understand. If you're a scientist,
Yeah.
a historian even, you should want to know like what is beyond money? Why don't they have a genuine sense of exploration
Yeah.
anymore?
I don't know, but can I take a second? Is my volume staticky or something? Because Bosch keeps saying that. So please let me know if it is in the chat. Because I would like to make sure I, maybe jump out and jump back in.
But he said he had some issues with his internet earlier.
Yeah. Maybe Mason, we could also mute you a little bit while you're not, because we are getting some of the static again. See, static gone. That's amazing.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a whiz. Leviosa, not Leviosa. So anyways, my question too is, all right, so let's, I think Darth Scipius said it before, like the Mayan temples were built by the Mayans, the Egyptian pyramids were built by the Egyptians, but why did now we're going with what the archaeologists are saying right now, their dated times. Why around the world did everybody start building pyramids around the same time?
That's the thing. Okay, so this is the other thing that stood out to me, even in college. I remember, and I wish I could find that book. I don't know what I did with it, but there was a textbook that it laid out the history of the world. It was an infographic, and
I would love to see that.
That the world over, human beings made the same steps in civilization at roughly the same time. You begin to see metallurgy at roughly the same time, certain types of art at roughly the same time, these monoliths at roughly the same time. And it's like, how is this a coincidence? How is anyone looking at this and thinking, oh, I don't know. They just independently decided one day. It just makes no sense.
Well, that's what I don't get. To me, we're dating these things after, and if there was a deluge, which almost over 100 different cultures around the world, landlocked cultures, they all have stories of a flood. Usually right before it, there's some giants, like some of the Mayan stories, or even the Aztecs, where giants were there, and most of them got washed away. The same with the Christian belief, the fallen, the Nephilim, or whatever you want to call them. They all get washed away, these giants. Now, could they actually, and he says it, I think, in this episode, are they giants, or are these just people that were so advanced compared to the hunter-gatherers, they considered them giants? Because
more
of
like
what
intellectual giants versus a physical appearance.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, think of the things they built. They were massive. To them, they are giants.
I think they're literal giants, and here's why.
I don't doubt that too. Go ahead.
The story, these people were not, I don't believe they were making this stuff up. And in other parts of the world, when people refer to these giants who helped them build their civilization or influence them in some way, they're describing them as physical giants.
Right.
So
they are.
Why do we assume that it's a metaphor? I think they were giant. If anything, it was meant to suggest that these were superior people who weren't quite human or fully human. But that's my
I'm with
my theory of what happened.
Dude, I think we're on the same page. Because so this is what always made me, when I was a kid, I think they said mankind went back about 90,000 years back in the 80s. And even then, now they're finding people, humans just like us with the same size brains and capabilities, about 300,000 years old. what I don't understand, even when I thought it was 90, it took them 86, 84,000 years till they were like, dude, let's start farming and maybe like build stuff instead of like following the animals everywhere. Let's herd them. Like it took them that long. I can't believe we are a species that is always moving forward, moving forward. And I just couldn't imagine for 84,000 years. And that was then. Now it's like 380, or 280,000 years that we just sat around. Hunter-gatherers never decided to move forward. I can't believe that.
It doesn't make any sense. But when you look at the fact that we nearly collapsed, like civilization, or not even civilization,
Mankind.
the human race collapsed multiple times.
Yep. There was one time we got down to
over.
less than 10,000 people.
Yeah, we kept
That's
having to
insane.
restart.
Yeah. Well, is it the Mayans? Mason, you might know this. Is it the Mayans or the Aztec? They say that this has happened 5 times. Civilization got to a point and then there was a restart. And that's what the calendars are for. It happened 5 times throughout mankind. We've gotten to a certain peak and then there's something happened and we restarted. Do you know anything about that, Mason?
Yeah, that's the Aztecs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also kind of weird that every civilization hits this peak and then starts like taking these psychedelics and starts getting
Yeah.
and starts like doing a lot worse things in progression.
Actually, I think psychedelics did a lot for the, like, just not even humans, but our species altogether, going back before Neanderthal. Like, mushrooms cause you to start thinking outside of yourself. I'm not.
It's the human race too. I mean, it's just this is what we do. We repeat history. History repeats itself, right? So we will reach a peak and then collapse, even without the environmental issues.
Right. Right. You're right. What about that one you just had up? There's a theory about the pyramids. Grant, there's a theory that these pyramids were used to pull electricity from the sky before they were pilfered. There's actually a theory that they actually pulled it from the earth and they were like Tesla coils,
Well, and landing pads for the giant spaceships.
Yeah,
I've seen Stargate.
I know. I used to believe that shit though, that like the Great Pyramid,
Well,
helped
I mean,
fuel up starships.
Well, not just that. It makes sense, like structurally, the way in which it's built. Why would you build a structure like that that can take so much pressure and everything on top when nothing's ever going to be on top of it?
Right.
But the
Why
other
which-
thing too,
yeah.
you do see people wearing what looks like spacesuits.
That's
You know,
true.
we've seen those drawings in the Americas. We've seen those drawings in the Sahara Desert of all places.
Right.
Like it is bizarre.
I mean, helmet and all.
Helmet and all.
Yep. I mean,
And they look like they're sitting in a spaceship too.
that's
I swear I even saw a TARDIS in one of the hieroglyphs.
there is a rock etching, if you want to call it that, where Namor, what I can never say his real name, so I'm now calling him Namor. Anyone?
Kukulkan.
Kukulkan. He's sitting in this thing with pedals on his feet. He has an oxygen thing going to his nose. Like it looks like a spaceship. And I like what Johnny Boy, and it's been a while, man, good to see you, says here. They could have understood farming better, so better nutrients, all naturally taller. Now, mankind, when we came out of Africa, we were roughly about 6'1", 6'2", and then you get into Europe, people start to get smaller. So could they have been talking about, these people were giants because they had a foot on us? But they say there was people that were 7, 8 feet tall, so I don't know.
That's actually a good point, because I do remember people describing like Scandinavians as still having East African skeletal frames, because they're all still very, very tall and lean and all of that.
Yep.
And when people moved across the world, they changed shape and color and everything else. But I don't believe it's that simple. Like I think that when they describe giants, they're talking about something unusual.
Yes.
I don't think they're talking about like other people or very tall humans. I think my theory is that they're talking about the Nephilim, that they're talking about these beings that had supernatural knowledge and were humanoid, but maybe had these godlike qualities that they later ascribed to gods people they interpreted as gods. So it went from describing them as giants, and maybe that's the only word they had for them, to over time them morphing into this mythology of all of these gods who brought them fire or who
Yeah.
taught them how to do these various things. And what's interesting is that when you look at these gods around the world, they have very similar personal characteristics.
Yes.
And that was the thing that I couldn't get past. Like, you could say, okay, the Greek gods and the Norse gods, they're similar because they're on the same continent. But then they're similar to the gods in among the Yoruba.
Yeah.
Like, why is that a thing? And then they're similar to gods in the Americas.
Yep.
How did that happen? So it's just, and then even in Japan, like, they have comparable matching gods with the same personalities.
Yeah.
The Aboriginal Dreamtime has these exact same characters with the exact same traits. So
The
like,
hoodoo?
and
Who does?
Aboriginal Australians, like,
Right.
you know, and they've been isolated for 60,000 plus years. So
And I was trying to say that maybe a couple last week or the week before everyone called me racist. But that's what I was trying to say. They are an isolated group, which tells you, like, their stories to me are some of the most important stories, you know, in any of our cultures, because they've been handed down. It hasn't been broken. It's been handed down generation for 60,000 freaking years. Over in Australia, they've been isolated. They've had their stories. They used to be, before Western diet came in the last, like, 100 years, they were tall, lean, lived to 85, 90 years old and died of natural causes. Like, that's how it used to be. And the idea that, Moses lived to 600. I don't know if we lived that long, but who's to say, we didn't live longer back in the day when the atmosphere was different and, before the ice, the impacts changed the world. I mean, larger animals lived on this planet because of the way the oxygen levels were and stuff. Who's to say we didn't live longer because of things of that nature?
Oh, that's a good point. Everything was bigger back then, too.
Yes, much bigger.
And I'm assuming that the diet was a heck of a lot healthier.
I mean, a goddamn armadillo was the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. You know what I mean? That's crazy to me. What were you going to say, Tina?
Okay.
Were you going to say something, Tina?
Oh, no, sorry. I was just agreeing.
Oh, okay. Go on, Jayne.
I was just going to say, I think it's interesting that a lot of these stories aren't being recorded and taught as much as they should, because you do have, like, the Australian Aborigines. You have the Khoisan people in Africa, who are, like, the oldest human population on the planet. You have all these isolated communities and tribes that have these stories of our ancient history, and it doesn't seem like they're putting it down and publishing it.
Right.
They'll laugh it off as a myth or as a fairy tale. But then when you start to compile all of these stories, when you look at them side by side and you see they're the same and it makes no logical sense as to how, it changes everything. It's just like when I found a study not too long ago and posted on Twitter about the fairy tales being the freaking same, like Cinderella and stuff like that. There's a version of it
Really?
all over the freaking planet.
Isn't
And
that
it
nuts?
makes I mean, shoe being found, the wicked stepmother. How? Like, this is crazy. So it's almost as if human beings do have, whenever we were one population, we had stories and we had events that happened that we're recalling now that we have been dispersed around the world and live separately, but those stories continue to be passed down.
Right.
And for whatever reason, you have some people like him who are looking at this and saying, okay, well, this means something.
Right.
This is significant. And other people who are like, oh, no, it's just a coincidence.
Well, see, but the crazy thing is, and Darius, because you know a lot about this stuff too. I sent you a link. Something that gets me too is I've always, even as because I've always been into history. I wanted to be a history teacher since probably the 6th grade. And then I started doing way too many drugs. But not in the 6th grade. I waited till probably the 8th. But anyways, I always questioned these things. It never made sense to me that we were around for so long as we are right now, and that we waited tens of thousands of years before we realized grouping up as a civilization was a smart thing to do. Farming was a smart thing to do. Like, I can't believe it took them that long. And it was like one person was finally like, dude, what are these little things inside the apple? Like let's try planting that and see what happens. Or what is this in our, soybean, whatever it was. I always found that really, I don't know, messed up that we didn't
You
see
know, it
that.
was some lazy dude. They said you got to get rid of all these yucky things that are inside of it, and he just buried it one day and then took a shit on top of it, and then all of a sudden it started to grow.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay.
There
What
was-
is-
That's my theory.
I could see the progression because we did have, and still do, some nomadic and semi-nomadic populations, and I could see how that would be for a very small population, how
Right.
that would be a good approach.
Right.
But then they had the mobile farming where they would plant things and then continue to migrate. This was the thing in the Hobbits that people complained about. I mean, the Rings of Power.
Yep.
It was probably the only thing that made sense, which was that they sort of migrated in a circle
Yeah.
and they would come back around to get the plants that they had planted.
Oh.
So that was an actual thing. And then eventually, as the population grew, you could see them start to settle. That part I can kind of get, but I agree with you. Is like, why would it take that long for them to figure out?
Right.
It's like we did in fact lose something.
Yes.
And no one wants to ask the question, what did we lose? Why
I
is
love-
there this gap?
I love how he uses the term "we're a species with amnesia" because we totally are, because we don't know what happened pre, the Sumerians or whatever. But Bosch, I have not heard that claimed at all. Gobekli Tepe is over 12,000 years old, and that is the top layer. So I have not heard that it's only 5,000 to 8,000 years old. There's no claims of that I've seen. Have you guys seen anything? Gobekli Tepe to me is solid. They know for a fact it's 12,800 years. What were you going to say, Mason?
I haven't heard anything about Gobekli Tepe being aged anything less than about 12,000 years.
Yeah, same here.
But,
Same here.
I did see some article. I'm forgetting where it was, but it was talking about like what happens with a pregnant woman when she's like in a distressful situation versus just a civilized place. Like if you're getting chased by like a saber-toothed tiger or whatever every day, the kid is born with a lot more aggression. Like he's more in tune to be aggressive and
Well, you have to be.
grow
It's
muscle.
right.
But like there's this biological thing that happens that makes the baby feel like he has to be more aggressive.
Right. It is a I mean, over time you change. Like I know we all they say that we all have, there's the fear of the dark because of what we dealt with for millennia as, cavemen, where we were without the fire, we were going to be eaten. So we fear the dark. So I know what you mean. Like our eyes actually got better at night because of it. And because of we got stronger and bigger, but also, the proteins we were eating and things like that. But I want to quickly say, Darius, what's up, bro?
Hey, what's up? Thanks for the invitation.
Anytime, man. Anytime. I always mean to send you some and invite you because I love your stuff. I think you have a great voice. So what do you think about what we've been talking about?
So my understanding of why we started developing civilization when we did is partly because of what you said with the population bottleneck, but also the the end of the Ice Age was like 12,000 years ago.
Yeah, 12,800. I would say.
Right. And so for a few thousand years, the Sahara was all green, covered with forests. And so we could spread out and as hunter-gatherers, follow the herd, gather enough food because it was plentiful. But then over time, it started to dry up. The trees disappeared. And then, eventually we ended up with sand. But as it was constricting around the waterways and the rivers, then that's where people kind of closed in on. And then the herds, the migration patterns were disrupted. Sometimes they would just disappear. And so people had to, this is my understanding of the official theory. So that basically they had to supplement their diet from the animals that they just didn't have around anymore with more and more plants over time. And so, yeah, think about it. When the Sahara gets dry enough, and the Egyptian deserts get dry enough, that's pretty much the only place left. with all the silt and everything. And so, yeah, they settled in one place and they got good at planting the crops because that was a bigger part of their diet. And then they experimented and stuff like that. And then once you have a surplus, then your population can grow. And then you need government to manage it. Unless you're an anarchist.
I'm muted, but it grows from there. Like, I do it all the time, man. First, I want to say the rogue attractions. I am so sorry I missed your 1K stream, dude, yesterday. I just family stuff and getting Christmas stuff ready. I apologize. But if you guys are not subscribed to my friend at the Rogue Attractions, he is amazing. He does live streaming for Geeks and Gamers at some of the I'm embarrassed to ask. I don't remember the girl's name you do it with, my man. But they do live streams at the parks and stuff, and it's a lot of fun for Geeks and Gamers. And then he has his own channel, should be coming on hopefully in a couple weeks on a Saturday. So make sure you guys are subscribed. You know, Darius, I have to get back to what you said there, because it is true. What gets me is like, it's hard, I think, for some people to understand when I say modern man goes back 300,000 years. It's not like a dumb version of modern man. They have the same brain capacity, the same, for the most part,
Anatomically modern.
Anatomically modern.
And the ones over the past 200,000 years have been exactly us.
Exactly us. Yes. So you're trying to tell me that, and they did live with other hominoids, Neanderthal,
Denisovan.
Yep. Denisovan, the ones in Australia that look like Grant, but smaller. Like they're all, yeah.
Heidelbergensis.
Yeah. All of them. But they all have, even though they live in all different places around the world, they all have similar flood stories, creation stories. Jayne, you said it, giants. A lot of the times the giants are these tall, red-headed, white, giants anywhere from 7 to 13 feet tall. The Native Americans have that. People over in Europe have that. Like, how do they not, if there wasn't some form of people communicating, how are all these stories so closely the same within the same time period too?
So we talked about, or you did talk about genetic memory a little bit ago. Do you think that has any part to do with this? Like, we just
I do a little bit. The pyramid thing, no. Like, to be like at the same time we're all going to build pyramids, no. It was something when you're a smaller group of man and you every night are defending yourselves from saber-toothed tigers, bears. In the Americas, there was lions at the time. You grow a fear of the dark because you can't see it coming. And maybe once every few weeks or months, one of your people gets ripped out into the dark and you don't find them again. Like, that is something I believe that's in our DNA, the fear of the dark, because of that. But I don't think a time clock, all of a sudden we were all like, we're going to build pyramids now. I don't think that happened.
From a biblical perspective, though, I think, I don't know to what extent this perfectly aligns, but, we do have the story of Babel. We have the story of humans building this huge monolith to heaven or wherever they were trying to go. And it being destroyed, and then after that, humans being dispersed.
Right.
My theory, which sort of contradicts his, is that these monoliths are just one more thing, along with the various stories, one more skill, along with fire and all these other things that humans were taught. And they did have the knowledge and skill to build in their different places around the world, but they just forgot how it started.
Right. But okay, so we got dispersed, and I do take, like, the Bible is not just fairy tales, people. Like, they're literally trying to tell you maybe about a group at a time, and they choose like one person to be the person that, okay, Abraham is the focal point of the story, but there was probably quite a few Abrahams that, helped build the nation of Israel, or the Jewish people. The story of Babel is a story about, civilization getting too high and some, like you say, some type of natural disaster brought us down and made us we weren't able to communicate through, transport or whatever they were using to communicate continents or even through cities to city. And we got knocked back a few thousand years.
That's definitely one way to interpret it. I mean, that would have, the people capable of building something like that would have been an incredibly advanced civilization.
Yes.
And then it was destroyed.
So let's say this too, and I'm sorry that I just keep jumping in, but let's say this too. They get destroyed, and some of the groups, and Handcock always brings it up. When a civilization gets destroyed from some apocalypse, the hunters and gatherers are the ones that survive because they're more acclimated to a world without technology. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times those are the survivors. They take in these people that are the technological, the remains of the technological group. And that's where these stories are coming from. It's coming from the point of view of these hunter gatherers, but they literally are talking about people from these cities and these greater civilizations that they brought in that helped them rise up past hunter gathering. Does that make sense?
Preppers saving the city slickers.
Yes. Yeah. Something like that. Like that.
Basically. I mean, it's kind of true.
Yep. Tina, what do you think? Anything you want to jump in on?
Well, Jayne, I did share in the private chat a link to a histo map that my son showed me from his last anthropology course, and it compares all the different civilizations' development. So that might be what you were looking for from your old textbook.
Hold on, I'll share it right now because I was looking at it myself, and I thought it was kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. So let's see, info. So a histo map for thousands years of the world history. Relative power of complementary states, nations, and empires. So let's see how far back they go. So they only go back about 2000 BC, so 4,000 years ago. But it shows all these. It's hard to read it, but it like kind of where the periods they were in. Middle Egyptian period is the same as first Middle Minoan period. So it kind of goes through all these different groups and where they were in those times. And they kind of do, a lot of them add up, or as one kind of goes, starts to fade away, another one grows. It's interesting.
It's fascinating.
It is very fascinating.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. The one thing that they mentioned that isn't in this map is the fact that the Egyptians were the only African civilization to be added to that map, where they thought it was interesting that they didn't go any further than that.
Yeah, no, I know. Mason,
why the one I saw was a little bit different because it delved into even like the creation of certain kinds of pottery that are very similar around the world.
How does that happen?
I don't understand it either.
So now you're going to go to like Graham,
art. The evolution of certain types of art happened at the same time.
This is something else I believe in, that at certain points we tap into a universal knowledge. So like, think about it. Anytime we were building one thing, somebody else was building the same exact thing. Alexander Graham Bell building the phone. You also had the guy in Italy doing the same thing. When Tesla was doing what he was doing, there was people over in Europe doing the same thing. Like, there's always two asteroid movies at the same time too. You know what I mean? Like, it always seems like they come in pairs, and it's like they tap into something, and Joe Rogan talks about it, and others, like there's like a universal, I don't know, thought out there that you could tap into.
The Akashic Records?
Kind of, yeah. That's a good one. Can you speak on that for a second?
Well, that's a little bit more woo-woo than just the history, but it's like a spiritual kind of concept where there is this almost like a spiritual library out there, right? In the same sense that, if you feel like your consciousness is being transmitted to your body like you're an antenna, then if you can, it's also kind of a psychedelic idea, but if you can tap into this library, this reservoir of all knowledge that has ever existed, then sometimes maybe something comes to you in a dream or inspiration strikes you. So the idea is that I'm not an expert on Akashic record, but I think that's kind of the idea.
But that is the idea. Like we tap into something that's, beyond our world, that when you take DMT or ayahuasca, you might actually meet the people that help us with that. I don't know.
Could you also be tapping into another dimension?
That's what I mean. Like, could some of our thoughts interweave between dimensions?
Or if this is a simulation, that's the other theory.
Simulation one fucks me up, man.
Yeah, it really depends on your belief in what thought is. If you believe thought is an actual living constant thing, when you take these things, it allows you to actually properly interact with that form, that that kind of life form. Many cultures have believed that through the hallucinogens that you can actually reach a different level that allows you to communicate just in a different way. You're still communicating essentially the same way, but you're able to understand what they've been telling you the entire time.
Right.
And it could be something like that.
No, absolutely, man.
Or it could be your brain melting. I don't know.
It could be a little bit of everything, and this is another thing, like Soul Assassin, the greatest mod in the world, and with Eric K and Mark, he says, theory, what if we didn't build anything but took over when we outlived the other humanoid species from the past? I don't doubt maybe not other humanoid species. I just think older human civilizations that created something and something wiped them out, either, the younger Dryas impact, disease, whatever. And a lot of these cultures say this was here. The Egyptians, the Sphinx was there. I just dug them out. The Mayans, no, like this was here. We just took it over. Like a lot of their stories tell us this, and archaeologists are like, they don't know what they're talking about. Don't worry.
Here's the thing too, though. It's not like the other thing that always fascinated me as a kid was there were all of these, like we are modern humans, but there were all of these other humans, archaic humans, they call them, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in the Americas.
Right.
And they don't exist anymore. Like all of them?
Right.
You can't tell me that just naturally happened. That doesn't just naturally happen. There was a genocide of all other human beings on this planet.
Right. That's some crazy shit.
Happened. And no scientist gives it a good explanation. They'll say, oh, well, we mixed with them. Only 1% of our DNA is archaic human.
Right.
Generally speaking, maybe give or take, maybe 2% here and there. Other than that, these people were wiped out.
Jayne, some people have more Neanderthal than they do that ancient human DNA.
No, I'm including Neanderthal. I'm
Okay.
talking about Neanderthal, Denisovan, and the archaic African DNA.
Okay.
On average, people may have 1-2%, maybe.
Right. But see,
that's
like
roughly what we have.
That ancient African one is the one I'm talking about, because that is mankind, us, as we are today.
Out.
And what did that? I mean, they say it's a high number, saying there was 10,000 left. Some believe it got under 1,000. There was a lot of Targaryen shit going on to get us back to where we are.
But even before, what I'm saying is, you're misunderstanding me.
Okay.
Here's my problem.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me listen. All right.
The modern human population did go through all those bottlenecks we talked about. But we've always still been ourselves, modern humans. A completely separate group from the archaic humans who are completely different. Okay. They don't exist anymore. That's only crazy. Remnant of their DNA in our population is the few of us who have a little bit of it. Which if you go to 23andMe or whatever, they can tell you what percentage of it you have.
No shit, really?
Yeah. But the majority, they don't exist anymore. Like there's no reasonable, rational explanation. Some people believe we wiped them out. Some people believe that they died of disease. But you're telling me that planet-wide, these people just disappeared?
Right. Because we know they migrated out of Africa. We know they migrate. I mean, Neanderthal was all over Europe. And
the Neanderthal migrated from Africa to Europe. The Denisovan migrated into Asia, and you had a group that migrated across Africa. The ones in Africa are gone. The ones in Europe are gone. The ones in Asia are gone. Tell me how that happened.
But what are we then?
We're modern humans.
Right, but where did we spark?
A separate branch of the family tree.
That's what gets me. Like what the chicken or the egg type thing. Like, because
Well, we're the leftover experiment for whatever created the previous ones. It took them away, and we're the fungus that was on the side of the petri dish that started to grow.
Right. Well, no, but what gets me is like, because we were taught as kids, at least me in the 80s, we were taught that we came out of Africa and we moved up to Europe and then spread out from there. And they never told you that that form of mankind, that ancient human species is gone and we just have a little bit of their DNA left.
But nobody ever went to a museum and saw the Neanderthals and thought, where did they go?
Well, see, they're so obvious though. Like Neanderthal,
Well,
I just
why
thought
are they gone? Like,
I
even if you take one group,
yeah. Okay, let's take
even if
Neanderthal.
we just focus on the Neanderthals,
Let's do that.
where did they go?
See, I always think, and you know what?
Stop
Anybody
it.
have? Well, no, Darius or anybody have an idea? Mine is that we either kind of like bred them out, or we actually something happened with a disease or climate that they just couldn't handle that we could, even though they were a stouter being.
Yeah, I was always taught that we interbred and murdered a bunch of them.
There's
Okay,
not
they're
enough
just
DNA to show that.
But
There's
we would
enough
still have a
DNA
lot
to
of their
show that
DNA left then, wouldn't
Okay,
we?
but
we
if
wouldn't
they're
have
like-
bred, but
they're
1% is not enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go.
I mean,
they're
there are.
person thousands of years ago.
Say that again, Mason.
If they're just like one or two people in your ancestry line, like 1,000 years ago, and then the rest of it is just Homo sapiens, then that would make sense that they're just like 1 or 2%, right?
Right, but the question is we. So in my mind, okay, Neanderthal is a different humanoid. You know, the Denisovans are too, but that African branch, that's the one that messes me up. Because when I found out they were pretty much wiped out and there's barely anybody who has a percentage of that left. Like, where the hell did modern man, because they're considered the same as modern man. You know, they're the 300,000-year-old bones too. So they were us probably better specimens.
The archaic ones were separate though.
Were they?
Yeah, you had.
So when did they come
parallel.
out? When did
Okay,
they?
so think about, you understand the Neanderthals, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you had a comparable population
Yep.
in different parts of the world. They were just called different things.
Well, they
You
were a little
had-
bit different.
They were different, but
Yeah.
they were all archaic, alternate branches of us.
Right.
You had those, and you had the Denisovans. They just haven't given the African ones a name per
Okay.
se.
See,
But
I always
they're-
thought that was modern man.
No,
Oh, wow. That blows my
you
mind.
had a whole branch of archaic humans living in Africa side by side with human Africans.
What?
And the humans did the same thing there that they did in Europe and Asia. They killed them off or did something.
But modern man does come from Africa, correct?
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. You were, woo. So there's an archaic. Okay. So maybe I got that confused. I always
So when we
assumed
were
they were
in-
the same.
No, when we were in Africa, we also had these other humans there with us.
No shit. That fucks me up because I knew of the Denisovans. I knew of like Neanderthal. They were, you know, Neanderthal definitely looked different. They had bigger brow lines. They had, you know, they were more stout, made for the winter like climates.
I don't know. I've met a few girls who look very similar to that.
Yeah. Well, let me read this real quick and then we'll go to Tina. Mr. Tickle Trunk for $5. He tipped us on Stream Elements. Thank you very much, sir. Make sure you could tip us if you're watching YouTube. Take a look up at the top. It's pinned up there. And we also have, just want to give a shout out to Severon, who's watching us on Rumble. We have about 6 people watching us right now on Rumble. I wish we had more. Thank you very much, guys. But Mr. Tickle Trunk for $5, he says, when we used to think the Earth was the center of the universe, we used to think the Earth was a few thousand years old. We wrongly think we're alone in the universe. Now we think... Did I miss something? Oh, did he do 2? Hold on. We probably wrong think where we're alone in the universe. Now we think we're descendants of the only group of humans allowed to progress to farms. I get what you're trying to say. Like, I mean, look, history, that's one subject that can never be solid to me. Just like science. It's a science. We're never going to get the story correct. Because first of all, history is always written by the winner, the victor. So we're usually getting their point of view, and there's rarely the other point. I mean, look at Egypt. Tutankhamun, they tried to there's pharaohs they literally scratched out of existence, and we were lucky to find out about them. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm reading that correctly. I don't know why we're the only ones that made it to farming. I think it's come way before that, and
I
we.
just pulled up an article.
Okay, this is awesome.
So this is a reference to it. Yeah. So in Africa, humans were also mixing with these
What the?
proto-human, early human, whatever thingies.
Okay.
Well,
Like
in
the Neanderthals and the Denisovans and the others.
Well, that's the thing about humans. If they're around another sort of species, they're either going to fight it, eat it, or fuck
Yeah,
it.
well, I mean,
So it makes
they're like Americans. What were you going to say, Tina?
well, the Field Museum in Chicago has artifacts from at least one site where they truly believe that Homo sapien and a Neanderthal were like, equivalent of husband and wife, and they had mixed children because they were all buried together.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I
With
think I
the
remember
same
reading
kind
about
of the same kind of clothing, the same kind of adornments, So it's not like, oh, they captured some Neanderthal guy and he was the one who
No, I think there
was their slave or whatever.
I think it's almost like houses in Game of Thrones where they
Mhm.
political, like, okay, we've been fighting over this territory. I'll give you my Neanderthal son. You take my human daughter. And that's a lot of it, how it happened. I mean, who wouldn't find the big ass forehead of a Neanderthal chick hot? Come on, people.
But I
So-
do think that if we mix with them evenly,
Right.
then
There'd be more percentage.
there would be more of their DNA in us because we share a good bit of our own DNA with different populations we neighbor.
Right.
Anytime modern humans come in contact with each other, we exchange DNA at a
Right.
pretty significant rate. So if we were coming in contact with these people and we mix with them voluntarily, significantly, we should be half, maybe at least a quarter
Mm-hmm.
these people, but we're not, and there are no survivors.
Right. Ruben.
yes, yeah. That's the one thing that there's none of them that bred within their own species anymore.
And also the population is very small. The human population was incredibly small back
Yeah.
then. So
Real quick, Mason, do you have to bounce, man?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I just didn't want to interrupt this conversation.
No, that's fine,
So
man.
interesting.
I know it is, but let everybody know where they can find you. And Grant, if you could send Ruben a link, that'd be cool.
Yeah, just
No worries, buddy.
you can follow me on YouTube.
How many? Wait a minute. How many subs do you have on YouTube, dude?
I think I'm still at 60.
Guys, he has 60. 60. Mr. Tickle Trunk, are you subscribed? How about you, Mark? Please, guys, subscribe to him. He's been on my channel for like over a year now, and I didn't realize he was under 100 subs. Let's get him to 100 subs, please. Thank you.
Please don't make Scott kick me off.
I will. I will. He has until the summer solstice to have 100. If he has not by June 21st, he will be deleted.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
You can follow me on YouTube, on Twitter, or on Twitch, where I'm gonna start doing some gaming streams. I think
Nice.
I think if I use my Xbox, my mic will sound much better. So, yeah, it's been good talking with all of y'all. See y'all later.
Thanks, brother. You have a good night, man.
Yeah, y'all too.
All right. Yeah, we'll shoot Ruben because Ruben's one of the boys, and we lost Grant, but that's okay. Darius, what is this that we're looking at right here?
Oh, yeah. So I found that on Wikipedia. I've seen that before. It's like it's a hominin family tree.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jane. I try not to mix up hominins and hominids, but
What the frick is the difference? What is the difference?
I can't remember.
They sound a
But-
lot alike, don't they?
Yeah, they really do.
I think
That was a
hominin is more
homonym
general.
joke.
Went over my hominin
Yeah.
head. All right.
Which is
Darius.
not what grits are made out of. And so you have gorillini, that's where gorilla branched off, and then
Yep.
you have like Pan. Pan is chimpanzee. I think,
Okay.
or
We're
orangutan.
closest to Pan and gorillas, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of chronological. I think the y-axis is chronological, but
Okay.
like Jane was saying, you can have parallel evolution, I guess. You could even have like one branch that develops while what they branched off from
Mhm.
doesn't change very much.
Gotcha.
so they
Yeah.
did it both at the same time.
So is the one that you were talking about, Jayne, the A. africanus, right under Homo?
No, they would be in the Homo species.
Okay,
Um,
so
yeah,
they would be
be
up
in the
there.
light blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
because
just
Erectus
in-
was the first upright.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then Homo, that we are Homo sapiens.
yeah.
So
Homo
like,
sapiens sapiens.
yeah, why is that? Dude, stop it,
Gotta love
scientists.
Latin. Gotta love Latin.
Yeah. I like what Mark says here. Mark Wilkins, he says, this is one I always wonder too. Why didn't Native North Americans have the wheel when Europeans showed up? That is one of the only, like, that's the go-to for me where they're like, well, I mean, they didn't have the wheel, but that's like one of the only times you see anywhere where if one group, one continent has it, the other doesn't. That's the
They did,
only
though.
time. Did they like?
Yeah, they built toys with wheels on them, but they didn't have like not a pack animal, like they didn't have an ox.
They used dogs.
Yeah, you could put a bunch of dogs together, but
But
they
that's
didn't
why
really
they
have.
didn't use it, right? They used sleds because they had dogs, not, but I would think little wheels.
Those
would
might have
help.
come later though, because I think there's 4 waves of
Yeah.
Native American migration, and so like the Inuit were the last to arrive across the Bering Strait.
Okay.
'Cause I
Now-
think the early.
I don't
Okay.
believe in that. I don't believe in the Bering Strait shit
One
either.
of the questions too is, well, I don't either for a whole other point.
I mean,
but-
it happened, but I'm not saying they
Ooh,
were the
I've
first.
got,
Well,
I've got
the
a,
thing
I got
is-
a story about that when Jayne's done.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, because one point about that, you have this Bering Strait narrative, right? That all these people came across. And if you look at Native American DNA, particularly mitochondrial DNA, you do see that it's a very small population from which everyone came, but you do see these couple different branches
Mhm.
that sprung off from that population. However, there is one branch that clearly did not. It has no sister clades in Siberia, and that's B2. Mitochondrial DNA haplogroup B2 did not come from Siberia. The only other explanation is that it came across the ocean with the Pacific Islanders when they came across.
Right. Yeah, that
And
is another one.
people will deny that until the end of time, but as someone who actually descends from that branch and carries that DNA, I've studied it. I've studied it for years because it was so unusual. And there is, I can sit here and tell you, because I've read every single journal article published, it does not have a sister clade in Siberia. B2 did not come from Siberia. So tell me how the Bering Strait, these are questions they don't have answers to, and they
Right.
just shut it down and say, oh well, we will conclude that, or we don't know for sure, we haven't found the evidence yet. No, you haven't found it yet because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Mhm. It
So,
it
like-
might seem unlikely, but some people are pretty convinced that there was a South Pacific route to South America, because South America was had people on it so early, and like she said, there are some of these like haplogroup B2, and there's other like folklore coincidences.
Right. Well, even like look at some of the carvings in South America. They're very Asian-esque carvings of the faces and stuff like that. And aren't they finding like ancient either like Southeast Asian or even Australian DNA in South America before it would have come down from the Bering Strait? Like
Not quite that ancient. The
No?
DNA
Okay.
in the indigenous population is so concentrated that it's why it's sort of generally referred to as Native American no matter where you find it, because it is very small. It's
Okay.
highly concentrated. You don't really see anything from anywhere else.
Okay, gotcha.
It's just that within that population, within the DNA strains that are popular or highly frequent in the population, you have only a handful of strains,
Yep.
and there's just this one branch that doesn't fit.
Yeah. And that's weird to
And
me.
there was another one, X doesn't fit either. X2 is the one I think you may be referring to that has a commonality with people in Europe.
Okay, maybe that's, I don't know.
And
It's
it's
so
how did
it's
that
so
happen?
nuts to me. Like
Yeah.
one dude ran, like, hey, catch up to these. I'm gonna bang everybody. Real quick, Tina's gonna tell a story, but hello, Ruben. How are
Good
you?
evening. Very
Good
good.
evening, sir. Good to see you. And I'm gonna just quickly read this. We got another tip on Stream Elements from Senor Dr. Professor Tickletrunk for $5. I love that. And he says, we're proven over and over to not be as unique as we once thought. I mean, we're probably not the only humans that made it to farming. And I agree with that. No way 300,000 years someone didn't say, hey, why don't we plant the part we don't eat that has like these little seed things in them?
Just real quick.
Yeah, please.
To show you what I mean.
Okay.
So this is a mitochondrial DNA chart.
Please.
And if you look at B, it's red, right?
Okay. Yep.
Do you see it's over here?
Yep.
In the Americas. It is not in Siberia.
Nope.
It is down here. Highest frequency.
Or in the islands. So these people, which I truly believe crossed, the Pacific and landed somewhere in the Americas and started boinking everybody.
Yeah.
Well, you have two land bridges there. You have the upper land bridge, the Bering Strait, and you had Sunderland, where you have Indonesia and Africa and Australia. And that's where they were when the ocean levels were much lower before they could walk all those things.
Right. But what she's saying is, even if you had Sunderland, Ruben, you would still, if we went the path that we're taught, they would have this red group down in like New Zealand, Australia area would have had to walk all the way up through the Bering Strait and back down, not banging anybody pretty much until they get to about Washington State. Yeah. So, no, but yet South America has it in half almost in Peru, so they must have been seafaring people.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also you're missing the other continent that's the eighth continent's missing. It's not in this map right now.
The one where New Zealand was, or
yes.
Yeah, because New Zealand's like Zoolandia. Yeah, it was like New Zealand's like the mountain. Like it's nuts to me. And they also said that if there may have been a continent in the middle of the Atlantic, but when the ice receded from North America and Europe, because of that pressure, the ground came back up in the Americas, pushing tectonic plates and bringing that continent down. They're looking into that. But Tina, you had a story. Go for it.
Anthropology professor in high school. He firmly believed that somewhere in the beginning of the Homo erectus time frame, so before Homo sapiens, that humans spent a lot of time living in the water. I mean, not like under the water, have gills and everything, but like literally, they constantly spent a majority of their time underwater with their heads above the water. And the reason why he believes that is because if you compare human mammals to aquatic mammals, we have the most similarity with them in terms of how where the body hair still exists on our bodies, where all of us, we just have them on the top of our heads and in the areas that we need to protect, our private areas. That's exactly right. That's exactly what it is like with whales, dolphins, and things of that nature. And plus also,
like whales have bushes.
They have heavier hair in the private areas. Yeah, they do.
You never
whale pubes?
We'll have to look it up later. Let's look up whale pubes. Find that, Grant.
I'm Googling it now.
Go on, Jane. Or Tina, I'm sorry.
And so he realized that was kind of like the precursor to becoming seafaring people, is they developed like raft type things that they could carry their belongings on or carry their children on as they move from place to place. And then also that humans and aquatic mammals are the only two species that have sexual relations face to face. And they feel that the humans
are we saying missionary style?
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Face to face?
Face to face, missionary style. Yes, exactly.
You mean it's not the fault of the patriarchy?
No, it's not the fault of the patriarchy. But I always thought that it was really interesting because, I mean, it was kind of a way out there theory, but it makes you wonder. I mean, why did we lose hair on our arms and our torsos and our legs
when it's still cold?
Exactly. Yeah. And then we had to come up with clothing to either cover the areas because there was no hair anymore because it was being, just barraged by the sun, or because of the fact that there was no hair, so we had to wear clothes because it was cold.
And
why did we lose our hair?
Can I say really quick too?
course.
Handmaid's Tale's full of shit now.
Oh,
You know that the only animal that asks a question or is a human. No other animals ever ask a question.
How do we know that?
They haven't.
Wait,
if
dogs
you
do?
listen to I would say if you listen to Anne McCaffrey, I mean the dolphins.
I believe dolphins.
No.
They don't ask questions. They're just playing along. They're not asking anything.
No, dogs
They're-
ask
That's a
questions.
bit
If you teach them
specious
how to
there,
talk,
Ruben.
they can.
Parrots ask questions for sure. When my parrot says they want a
They're parroting.
cracker, seriously, they want a freaking cracker. They don't want a ball. They don't want
Yes,
seed.
but is
they
that
don't
a
want
demand?
That's not a
anything.
that's not a
That's a
question.
demand.
That's a demand. They're just asking for food.
No, no.
They're just-
I have seen
they're
countless,
not they have no thought in their
I've
head.
seen countless
Only humans.
videos where animals have been taught to use those buttons to talk,
Yo,
to speak,
like
to communicate. And hold on, there
Coco?
was one. Yeah, like that one. But there's one in particular. When her human sister is gone, she's asking, "Where is she?"
Right.
But you're
Or when
being
that
told.
when the cat died with the gorilla,
Yeah.
and the gorilla was asking where the cat went. I mean, they were asking a question. See, I can't believe that.
Which one? That video that was out there? It's fake.
No, Coco, whatever that.
Whatever. There was a video out there that was done that was manipulated. It wasn't real.
Look, there's a
What
I'm just
science.
saying.
dogs and cats are real.
We'll look up the paper on that. There is the gorilla. I want to say it was Coco, or the cat's name was Coco. And when the cat died, it was asking, where is the cat? And I don't think that was a doctor. That was an actual.
It's doctored.
Okay, well, we'll have to look that up. I like where you're going. See, we could disagree, and you could totally be wrong. Yeah, dogs
I
have to
sent-
go outside. Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
But I put it in the private chat, the migration path of humans also. They have a pretty interesting graphic.
Okay.
Because
here,
again, the
let's-
way that the Earth actually is connected is much more connected than we actually think.
Okay. All right. So
You see it here that all the land masses can be,
Oh, we're looking at it from like the North Pole down.
down. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I understand.
And you see where
that
everything
too.
starts off with and how it moves over, and it's
Okay,
again
but
we're a lot closer than we think we are.
But still, where you have letter M. So where letter M is, this group of people go up to about letter G with the B, which Jayne was talking about. Then you don't see B at all until you get to about Washington State. So no one had sex over here? Come on. Like they must have been, and you agree, seafaring people.
Yep.
And we're going pre-Ice Age, like you said, Sunderland, there was more landmass. I believe there was more communication between the continents. Technology all got to a certain point with a lot of these cultures, and you're trying to tell me that it's only, was built in 12,000 AD when it was covered like a mountain. Like it doesn't make sense where the strata shows how deep they were, and why did they all build on some form of a spring or underground water? I don't know what you want to call it, but like a culmination of water.
An aquifer.
Yeah, an aquifer. Thank you. A lot of these ancient pyramids all have a natural spring or aquifer underneath them, including the Great Pyramid. So like, who decided to build pyramids on top of these? Like all these different cultures. It just doesn't make sense that they didn't communicate with one another. That's a cool map, though, man. I like that.
I don't like it. It's too flat for my flat Earth theory.
Let me just check the show real quick because I don't remember how they talked about. Okay, Kubla Khan or whatever his name is.
Bless you.
I hit play. They're gonna nail me. Kubla Khan is one of those people that they talk about. One of these he came on a boat with no paddles. He was more European looking, had a beard, brought them technology.
So he's Santa Claus.
And then left, and didn't come back. Zaxx, what's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good, man. Have you been listening? I know you have.
I have been. This is a great conversation you guys are having. I think
I know.
They could, and that made me realize, I think, what this show is missing, and that's he needs to have someone with him, like not just at the sites he goes to, but a co-host with him, because your conversation has been awesome, and it's I've learned more from listening to you guys than from the show so far.
Oh, so someone he could be
That's
bouncing
all
these
Jayne.
things
That's
off
all
of.
Jayne and Tina.
Dude,
so.
anytime Jayne and Tina, like literally Jayne makes me always sound smarter. Tina keeps it flowing. The guys do a great job. I'm loving Ruben bringing in his. Darius is a nice pickup. But when Jayne is not here, it literally goes down. I'm not lying. The conversation goes down because Jayne always has shit right there.
And she's very eloquent. I want to grow up to be Jayne.
Yes, someday.
And asking great questions too, like great questions that on this show, if he had someone to ask those questions, he could then answer them, which would then fill in some blanks for the audience.
Like you need an after show for this instead of She-Hulk.
Yeah.
Well, I myself went out and researched all the different books, the Joe Rogan podcast, because I saw the entire episode, all of them.
Yep.
And then I went to Joe Rogan because you had Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock on the show.
Yep.
And I'm watching that, and then that takes me down another path where I go to different books. So that's why I saw and I can vision in what's happened. This whole impact hypothesis that occurred hundreds of thousands, well, not hundreds, tens of thousands of years ago, and just obliterated all over the world in all over the places.
What is crazy is 12,800 years ago, the Ice Age comes to an abrupt end for about 1,000 years. There is massive cataclysms, but yet people survive in different areas because they're not affected by it. And then again, it gets really cold again. So like it starts warming up 12,600 or 800 years ago. It gets really cold again. Land masses, there's more land mass for about over 1,000 years to about 11,600 years. Everything was kosher. And then there is a drop in temperature again. I think I have that the right direction, but there are multiple apocalypses that happen. And even in that 1,000 years, right before it, they build Göbekli Tepe and then they cover it up to protect it. Like they must have known this apocalypse was coming. They must have been smart enough and at least knowledgeable enough in the stars and in viewing the heavens to realize there was going to be a comet impact at some point. So like, and yes, I think it was you. Did you say Göbekli Tepe was less than 12,000 years old? Ruben, was that you?
No, I think it's about more than 12,000.
Yeah, it's about the most. Okay, so the top portion of it is 12,800 years old. Prior to that, it goes back, they believe, a couple more thousand years, and we've only excavated 10% of it. We've just done LiDAR to look at the rest. And
because when you see every single site where you have these monuments, let's say that they're monuments. When they do the scans, you see that generally what we do is that we tend to find a location we like, and then when things go wrong, we build on top of that location, and then keep on going. So then we have layer upon layer upon layer. Because why are we moving? Let's rebuild. We were going to do it here. Right. Be it the same thing happens in whenever there's a flood here in the America. They do move. Sometimes they move cities, but they try to rebuild in the same location that they were before.
Right.
And that's what we see, that we're not looking at the entire
picture. And that's what we're trying to do here. Cause I'm with you, Ruben. I've been following Graham Hancock since the 90s, found Randall Carlson through him, listened to the first episode with him and Rogan on back, 2010 when they first met at Rogan's house. That's a great one. And I've seen even Graham Hancock's, evolution from could have been aliens to now it's ancient civilizations. And he's really gone the spectrum of that, which is nice to see.
As I want to see, because again, we don't know one thing, like the United States has a lot of land in the Rockies, in the area that would have been, covered with the ice, in the plains area, and the Badlands that you see in up in Washington area.
Yep,
is owned by the government, and a lot of the land also is by Native American owned and had sacred land to them. Like, who knows what's there? We don't know.
I've been asking that question. I think I said it last week. All these federal federal parks are places where we can find the remnants of the deluge. Randall Carlson has showed us, the ripples receding are like now like
Yes.
little hills, which is amazing to me. Like if you don't follow him on YouTube, Randall Carlson's, first of all, his like 7-episode, 12-hour, Atlantis. It's amazing. Like I've watched it twice. He really goes.
Didn't change the ending though, did it?
It didn't, but he goes line by line explaining it. And again, we have an ancient description of a cataclysm, literally saying this is not a story. This is a history given to him by, one of his relatives from a old priest in Egypt. And we still take it as, oh, it's just a story. That's something that I feel like archaeologists and academia are too arrogant to take. I understand it's been bloated up a little bit, but these stories are stories of what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm sick and tired of us looking over, literally saying they had to dig out the Sphinx, but yet they're the same people that built it. No, that's not true.
It's a good example too. Like when you look at Scotland, right?
Yeah.
For the longest time, they had the unicorns, and people are like, "Oh, y'all are just ridiculous. These things never existed. It's all fantasy. It's all mythology." Then, lo and behold, they dig up some animal remains that looked a whole lot like what unicorns would look like if they were real.
Right.
And it's like, oh well, maybe they did remember in the form of stories, in the form of mythology, in the form of these fairy tales. Like these stories mean something. The reason why humans tell stories is to convey lessons and to convey our history. So there is truth in all of it.
Yep. I mean, look,
to just ignore it is crazy.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Even the Epic of Gilgamesh has that warning. They warn you about prepare for the flood, but be prepared. Always doing that. And the thing is, it's always done that. There's always a lesson to be learned that we have to heed.
Yeah. I mean, what were you going to say, Grant?
I said that's the one thing that I appreciated about this series. Like, just something that seems so obvious that it was just like a little light bulb that went off in my head. He's saying throughout history, we've got all these stories and everything, but we've also got stuff like from the Bible and everything. So why is it that when someone's written a story about something and it happens to be in the Bible, we automatically dismiss it, yet something that's been passed down generations that we don't? Like it was such an obvious thing that I'd never really thought of. We just put it in a box and then say something about that box, but nothing to do with stories. And I like the idea that all stories aren't just stories. They have to have come from somewhere. And to automatically just dismiss it because you don't think it makes any sense is, I think, the biggest downfall of any of the archaeologists when it comes to finding the truth.
Yeah. Real quick, because I see this discussion going on. So the Younger Dryas impact theory is a theory that a comet broke up, and that comet, we still go through the path of its debris every June and every late October, early November. And I'm blank. Taurid, thank you. It's the Taurid comet, comet.
Yeah, comet. Yeah,
yeah.
Belt, we go through that. We go through a lot of meteor showers as we go through, and the fact that you got to remember. I don't know if anybody knows this, but we're constantly moving. We're moving around the sun. The sun is moving around but we're moving at an incredible speed.
Yep.
And the universe is not static. We're not just staying still. We're still moving. We're moving toward the great attractor that's out there somewhere.
Yep.
And since we're moving this, we're dragging all of these asteroids. The Oort cloud around us has asteroids. Those asteroids have minerals, rocks, water, everything in there.
They brought a lot of
things
life to our planet. If you really think about it. But yes, it wasn't just a comet that hit. They believe comet breaking up multiple comets over 1,000 years hit these ice sheets, and where there were already lakes, I mean massive lakes on the top, because they would melt, but they would stay on top of the ice like you would see in a river. Frozen river will have puddles. Well, this had massive lakes, and when these comets hit, it just broke the wall and flooded tens of millions of gallons. I can't even fathom how much, but enough that over 100 different civilizations have a flood myth. Which I believe is true. And Zach, I would say we should start a campaign to make me Handcock's Jamie.
I'd be all for that. Yeah, let's do that.
I think we should start a campaign. If somebody's smart out there and they want to start a campaign, and share it on like, Twitter and stuff. And I think he has an Instagram. We will do that. I want to be his Jamie. That'd be awesome.
I think that's really what the show needs, because he's talking to people who are from those areas oftentimes, and they don't speak English, so there's a bit lost there in translation being done. And there's a few questions that would just make the show that much better and fill some of those gaps.
Right.
That I think he knows, and he's in other places you've heard him say that, but on the show it's not there.
He didn't, right? And maybe he's waiting for the next season. I don't know, hoping for it. But yeah. I also think he is him and Randall, they are no longer to me just enthusiasts. They are definitely professional when it comes to this stuff. I mean, Randall Carlson's been doing it since 1972. Self-taught man. And damn it, that guy knows his shit.
I think what it's also going to take, this is where I sort of feel bad that I didn't go into the field, but I think it's going to take more people from these places to continue to do the work, because he's getting older. He's getting up there. He's not going to be able to continue to do this and sound the alarm.
Yep.
It's going to take the people from these cultures in these areas who notice the same thing that he does to start to continue to do the work of digging up the past in these different places and cataloging it, the way he has. Because right now you're going up against not just the mainstream scientists, but also the governments that don't necessarily want this stuff out either, because it can undermine what they consider their culture.
That's another thing. That's another thing, Jayne, which is interesting. Like, there were people that preceded him, but they were very, like, John Anthony West was all about Egypt. Not the pyramids are way older than they were. There, you have other people in Bosnia. That's their thing. He brought it all together. He is, and if he wants to make me his pupil, he's 72. I'm 46. I can totally be his pupil and take it on from there. I swear that would be a lifelong dream. I would do this for the rest of my life. I would argue with anybody. I'll debate anybody. I believe.
Would you go out into the heat?
I would do it all, Jayne.
Out there all hours.
Yeah,
Jayne,
definitely.
Totally. I would do more diving.
Indiana Jones it.
I would, and I would do more diving too, because I think more of the answers we need are probably, 100 meters underwater.
So very true. So very true. I mean, I wanted to be I wanted to be an archaeologist growing up. Like,
same here.
More Egyptologist, but I think it was just because I didn't appreciate the rich culture in South America and in Asia. Being the young little white girl living in a white neighborhood growing up. So
right.
Well, to be fair, that's all that we ever taught was Egypt. Like, that was the only thing. And then you realize that underneath the world and in the forests around the world, there are all these other ancient things that we can't explain, and all these pyramids everywhere for some reason. Yeah,
it's amazing. But he is that guy, and he is a lightning rod for the other side of it. I mean, they call him everything, charlatan, like everything you could think of. And he, some people think he has this huge ego. You have to have that big of an ego to withstand what he's been taking for decades. And it wasn't until Göbekli Tepe was proven to be that old where he was vindicated a bit. Like, it changed everything. Where are we on this?
It definitely brought him to the attention of a lot of people who were like, well, maybe he's crazy.
Yeah, right.
And then they're like, no, he's actually onto something.
And from the moment I read his first book in college, I agreed. I was like, they are fingerprints. He calls it fingerprints of the gods, but it's fingerprints of civilization we lost. And because stone is the only thing that can make it through. And I think Ruben was touching on that, in the Americas, they're like, oh, men weren't there until, Clovis came. Well, these ice sheets came pretty far down. And when they collapsed, they wiped out all remnants of any civilization that was already there, and so many different civilizations in South America, Egypt, they always talk about, no, there was an older culture that we, we're just building on top of. Like, look at Machu Picchu. You're telling me that, the building that happened at the same time, even though one group of people used massive megalithic stone, and then the repairs were made with tiny little stones.
And another example of this?
Yeah.
I want to show you something real quick.
I love it.
So in Africa, this is the Y chromosome DNA
Okay.
chart. And one of the things that was really weird, for the longest time, people in like Central West Africa talked about coming there from somewhere else, right? It's always attributed to Egypt, but it could have really been anywhere. And people didn't quite believe them. Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You know, y'all were isolated. Nobody came down here until the Europeans or whatever. But when you look at their DNA, look in the middle of Africa, that little burgundy spot.
Yes.
You see it?
Yeah, right there.
Right here.
Mm.
And it
that-
matches these burgundy spots in other places.
That's crazy. So
How did
they
it
really,
get there?
because they came from somewhere else.
Yeah. So these stories are true. They're out of context, perhaps. You know, they're ancient. They may not make quite as much sense as we think they should.
Right.
But when people tell you their stories that have been passed down from generation to generation,
There's a
we
reason.
should take it seriously.
And I hope I agree with that 100%. Were you gonna say something, Zaxx?
I was going to say, like earlier on, Jen was talking about that, and that blew my mind, discussing the fact that there are these people that migrated out. How come? Why are there none of them left? And there's no sign of them left in Africa where they originated. And I've never considered that before. But yes, that's a great question. Where did they go? Why did they disappear from there?
It's
Kill each
crazy.
other.
Yeah, that one blows my mind. That one blows my mind. And you know, again, you look at the Sphinx, and you know, Zaxx, you can leave anytime. God damn it. You look at the Sphinx, and you know, you have a geologist who really, wow, is everybody leaving? Did something happen I don't know about?
What the heck happened then?
I don't know. How many people did we just lose?
Like 3?
Okay,
Two?
well,
Yeah.
they'll come back. So something I found interesting was you have the Sphinx and you have a geologist, which I never understood. That was so weird. I never understood why.
Big Brother's watching us now.
I know, right?
Yeah, it just glitched out.
That was so weird.
We're
And
onto something.
We are. We're
Something just happened.
We're getting to the truth.
Check the news.
We're getting to the truth. But something I find very interesting is, you know, you look at the Sphinx, you have a geologist who says, well, yeah, you guys think that's sand erosion, but that's from rain. And that's from like 1,000 years, 10,000 years of rain. Why don't more archaeologists get more geologists involved? Because the rocks tell them more stories than what the archaeologists can take from it. Like, they have to find things. A geologist can look at something and be like, oh no, that rock is telling me something completely different. And I
What
never
do you
understood.
think? What do you think about the fact that the areas that we do want to research are always in war?
Ooh,
I brought that up last
good
week.
point.
Go back
And,
to
they, and again, because again, I know Gary was talking about wanting to go to Turkey, but again, with all the turmoil there right now, I think Randall Carlson was there, and I would love to go there too.
Same here.
And again, I would just go because I'm by myself.
You know, it's
I'm gonna
another
go.
good example.
Do it now.
Before you
But
change
again,
it, another
go.
good example of that, Mali. Because that's where they have all of those libraries where they were making copies
Twitter.
of books during
Right.
the Middle Ages.
Yeah, the
And a lot
Songhai
of those
Empire.
books are still there exactly during the Malian Empire. Why can't we go and just freely access them? Well, they're constantly in conflict.
Isn't that
There's
crazy?
constantly a war going on.
Timbuktu's a real place.
It is.
Well, I mean, look, Ruben, look at like, you know, Iraq, you know, look at them blowing up Samaria, you know, all these beautiful.
When they did that, it was just like, ugh.
Yeah. But Göbekli Tepe was, they just got the tip of it and realized how old it was. And then all of a sudden they shut it down because of how close the Syrian, I believe it was the Syrian war was, you know, civil war was going. And it's just like,
Yeah, I'm
why-
just done with all this. I think that I really think that there is some hidden technology. It's ancient, but it's not advanced. It's actually not advanced at all. I think has a lot to do with the crystals aspect of it, and in quartz. You're gonna all laugh at me, but no. But remember, you have a quartz wash, and how does that work? There's a vibrational frequency that quartz and other gems have, and
No laugh.
we have to utilize that. you know?
Oh, no laughing, dude. First of all, quartz, you can download information into quartz.
Yes.
They're learning how much
What?
you could. Oh yeah,
Yes.
quartz. even Silicon Valley is starting to realize that Quartz is one of the best ways to download information. Don't ask me how they do it. I don't know if I don't think it's etching. I think it's
The
actually
Force.
Yeah, it could be the Force. It could be the Force. But I also believe in frequency. You get biblical.
Yes.
You get biblical records of it. You get Egyptian records. You get, I want to say South American records where chanting or, brings down stone or rises stone, brings stone up.
It's in the Hebrew Bible too.
Yes.
Here's
I
what
mean,
you- like-
marching
like,
around
I'll just
the
tell you
walls
this much.
of whatever. Yeah, go
You
ahead.
guys go out there. If you have a quartz rock or anything out there, you hit that thing with a hammer, you're going to see electricity spark off of it. Just
If
tap
you want to
it.
do if you want to do a show on crystals, I am totally there for you. I have a crystal Bible. I have like
Yeah.
all kinds of like crystal knowledge.
Yeah, I do too.
Way
Yeah,
cool.
that's my thing. 'Cause
And
again,
if they
I do
float,
that.
they're a witch. No, just kidding. No. I mean,
I dated a girl called Crystal once. Does that count?
yeah. I
We
never
all
did.
float down
That's
here.
the after hours conversation.
Yeah. Never did crystal meth though, thank God. What I would say is this. After we're done with these episodes, that's what Aluminum Spork's all about. We'll do an episode on the crystals and things of that nature because Jayne and I have talked about this, and Grant definitely, and I and Zach, there was maybe a culture pre the younger Dryas that was advanced, but that doesn't mean they were advanced with combustion engines using gas. They used different things that they grew up in, and frequency, sound, the resonance, vibrations of all things. We know this as fact. Everything has a different vibration, and you can control those rock, trees, humans by finding that frequency.
We have the mythology of the sirens.
Yep.
Using their voice, these underwater people using their voices to cause other human beings to do things.
Yes.
That's why
Damn, Namor.
It's so funny because as we talk about this, like in the chat, I mentioned Wakanda testing the vibranium. Like, why would they pick Mali of all the countries on the planet? And
Oh shit.
they did. And then when we talk about Namor, right, and his parallel in this Mexican mythology of this person who came from the sea and taught them all this high technology, it's like, again, it goes back to stories.
Right.
Like, where are they getting these ideas from? Is it this collective consciousness? Are we all just repeating stories that we inherently remember genetically? Like, what is going on?
I'm with you, Jayne. And I'm also with Immortal Coil is in the chat. Immortal Coil talks about all this stuff. We're talking about the series on Netflix from Graham Hancock, Ancient Apocalypse. We're on episode 2. If you get up on it, man, you could come, because I know you dig all this stuff. So we'll have to talk. Yeah, Jayne, I'm with you. Like, look at in the Bible, the walls of Jericho. They marched around the walls with trumpets, and they used vibration to bring the walls down.
Because it was made of quartz.
Well, it was made of something. It was made of something.
But it's like you hear that story and you immediately sort of write it off until you realize that this could actually be possible.
Yeah.
And there's
Well,
what else could be
everything has
possible?
its own resonance. That's the whole point. If you can have a sound that makes the same resonance, it'll force it to vibrate. And if you got something that's got a weight behind it, and they could find the right thing, it'll crumble real easly. People have been breaking glasses and stuff for years with sound.
Mm-hmm. Oh, just the power of my voice. Harry Potter. But yeah,
Leviosa.
Leviosa. I believe Tesla, who he always said that he tapped into something meditating, and that's how everything came to him in pictures and in some entity telling him. I believe he tapped into whatever the ancient Egyptians and people around the world were using, because we always, for so long, just focused on Egypt. And I think John Anthony West really helped us with that. But we got to look at all these other cultures that talk about using vibration to liquefy rock and make it form it any way they want. Why do all these different cultures use the same, like in the rock, they use those tags made out of steel that hold the rock together, like the little bow tie looking thing. They're all these walls look different in different parts of the world. It had to be somehow combined and together. Matt says,
It's just a coincidence.
What's that?
It's just a coincidence.
Yeah, it's just just mark it up to a winky dinky thing. Matt says, yeah, things float when their resonant frequency is matched. They said the priests would, chant while they were moving the pyramid stone blocks, or the priests would chant while they were opening up the Ark of the Covenant. Like, they're just, every story has something about sound.
And we, in religious gatherings, have always chanted and sang in a particular way to connect with God, right? Which, again, that could go back to some thing that we know works in some way. We just have forgotten why we do it.
Yeah, and then the whole DMT is very important to me, because that's the one thing that we haven't even addressed here, and I don't really want to bring it up, but I'll just say it because I've done research. The fact that cannabis is very important to the health and well-being, and we've lost that. It was taken away from us in the 30s, and it's really beneficial. Hemp is very, very beneficial, and it does provide a lot of medicinal aspects, and I believe it has it can unlock the making you much more intelligent.
And so can psilocybin from mushrooms. I believe small doses of that help people a lot. One thing you said, look, our Constitution, independent, oh my God, I'm freaking blanking right now, but the Constitution was written on hemp paper.
Yes.
Like, you could cut down an acreage of tree. It takes 50 years for the trees to, replanted to come back to the same size, or an acreage of hemp, and it grows back in 6 months.
It uses, as opposed to cotton, it uses like I think 90% less water.
Yeah, so like big the green initiative. Why are we still using pulp of trees and not hemp for paper, for textiles, all these things? It definitely makes you think. But my boy from Zombie Box Reviews tipped $11.78 over on Stream Elements, and I thank you, buddy. I'm sorry I missed it. A little something. Man. He's my number one. I think he's still at the top of the list. My number one tipper since I got demonetized on YouTube. A little something to help with the channel. Thank you, my brother. Guys, thank you. Losing memberships, I didn't realize how big that was. It's huge. So thank you. Any bit helps. I really appreciate it, guys. Zombie. So Andy does have a question. He says, let's see. I think you're on to something. Wajanya forever. Wah, wah. Let's see. Soul Assassin sent something. Levitation by sound. Oh yeah, let's check this out real quick, and then we'll wrap it up because we've been going for a while.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of research on neomagnetic magnets and copper, and how important copper is. Yeah.
So this is from Observer 1964 on YouTube. But just showing how you can levitate rock. Are you guys seeing this? Hopefully.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Bass, different frequencies will hold it. I mean, it is vibration.
Although,
it's
kids on
it's
TikTok
physical.
can do that too.
That's true. And eat a Tide Pod at the same time. So they got you. But look how amazing that is. And that is not, I'm guessing this is actually sound doing it. I've seen it done with speakers with small like beads, being able to make them manipulate not into like perfect shapes, but into different shapes using different frequencies and sounds. So I don't know, but we have been going for over 2 hours. We probably can keep going, but we'll be back next week. We'll be back next week talking a little bit more about Ancient Apocalypse, and we'll be on episode 3 next week. And I think we're just... Is that vibrations? Are you trying to melt my brain, Grant? You're trying to melt my brain. We'll be talking episode 3. I think we're just going to stick with the Ancient Apocalypse show and not do Oak Island just yet, because I love that show, but I want to give it the time it deserves. But thank you guys for being here tonight. Thank you for jumping in, Ruben and Darius. Zaxx, thank you for showing up finally. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks.
Tina, as always. Jayne, as always. Grant,
as always.
As always. Mason, thank you. We're going to get you a better mic. And
as always.
Yeah, and we're going to do the intro as an outro. I love you guys. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
the new intro is actually still rendering as we speak.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that.
It's been doing it for 7 hours.
I'm going to tell you though, man, this song is my favorite. Like, this intro is the best.
Oh, thanks, mate.
Dial
That's
deep into
interesting.
conspiracies.
Aluminum smoke.
That's funny.
Good night, everybody. Have a good night.